Well, welcome to this first St Albans Thought for the Day. I think the aim for these is simply that we look a little bit about what's happening in our world, in our lives, and just reflect on it. I'm going to be sharing this with Elaine and Terry in the first instance. Maybe some others are going to join in giving these thoughts for the day. But today I wanted to just comment that I think this last week has been the week when the cracks began to show. And if you read about, there's a phenomenon, social distancing shaming, that emerged. As even people who were carefully abiding by the rules were subjected to abuse. An elderly gentleman who'd stopped on his morning walk to talk to a friend, keeping a thoroughly legal distance. Suddenly a woman came up, started shouting at them, and taking a tape measure out of her pocket and trying to measure the distance between them, and wasn't satisfied, even when I think one of them lay down on the ground and showed that they were well over 2 meters apart. Two flatmates out for a run together. Barrel load of abuse from an older man for being too close together, but they live in the same home. They're allowed to be close together. Then there's people who use social distancing to rules to settle family feuds. I gather people have been reporting someone else for breaking the rules, not from any concern for others' welfare, but just to settle an old score to get an old enemy into trouble. It even happens in government. If some of the Sunday papers are to be believed, there's a group of senior Tories have been getting together, starting to tell the press how they're not happy with the way the government is handling the crisis. And of course, that's just what we see in public. I wonder how many marriages, parent-teenager relationships, relationships with elderly parents are starting to be strained. Voices raised, doors slammed, hopefully not worse. And we're all finding it frustrating. I thought there were glimpses in the Sunday press yesterday of hopes that things were going to be lifted, and then of course the government ministers had to all come on TV and say no, that's not true. And I felt my hopes have been lifted and then crushed again. We're all finding it frustrating. But the question is, what are we going to do to avoid taking that frustration out on others? See, when cracks appear in the wall, you can do one of two things. You can get some more paper, some slightly stretchy paper, put it over them, and no one will know any better. Or you can ask, why are they there? What's the instability that's causing it? Is there a wall that needs tying in properly? Maybe some old plaster that needs redoing properly to reflect the shape of how things are settled now. Maybe even something that needs underpinning. And it's the same with us. We can paper over our frustration by learning some polite responses, making yourself some rules. I've decided that when he does that, I'm just going to ignore him, smile, and carry on. And that works. But it works for a bit. But if it's tested one too many times, it fails. And when that fails, the outburst is often much worse, isn't it, than the one we've been trying to avoid. We need a deeper solution for our frustration. And for Christians, that solution is called forgiveness. Not forgiveness, but forgiven-ness, the knowledge that we've been forgiven. Jesus told the story of a servant who was massively in debt, had all the debt written off, then went out and beat up another man for a few pounds. And the point is that wouldn't happen. It's ridiculous. Jesus is saying, if we could only grasp what God has forgiven us, if we could really grasp that God has poured out his undeserving love on us, far more than we could imagine, then we can be people whose cracks of frustration are not just papered over, but dealt with at the root. So let's go out today, if we're allowed to, or at least let's interact with people in our homes and on the phone, on WhatsApp, on Facebook today, as forgiven people who have that deep peace that comes from knowing the Father's love.